Last week's gasoline shortage on the southeast part of the country due to a ransomware attack was just a taste of what you can expect across the entire nation if radicals in Congress and the Biden administration get their way. From the Green New Deal to Agenda 2030 to the Great Reset, a radical environmental movement threatens the very lifestyle you choose to lead. We'll explore this in today's episode of Analysis Behind the News, where we provide the perspective and the plan to help restore American liberty and independence. The Epoch Times reported last week that Democratic Governor Gretchin Whitmer gave Canadian pipeline company Enbridge until Wednesday to shut down Line 5, which runs under the Straits of Mackinac, amid fears that it could spill in a channel linking two of the Great Lakes. In a statement, Governor Whitmer said, "These oil pipelines in the Straits of Mackinac are a ticking time bomb, and their continued presence violates the public trust and poses a grave threat to Michigan's environment and economy." She even went so far as to explain her line of thinking in a Washington Post op-ed after she received large pushback as this came to a head during the gas shortage in the Southeast. She wrote, "The two aging 4.5-mile sections of underwater pipeline are a ticking time bomb. I'm taking every action I can to shut them down, to protect two Great Lakes and the jobs that depend on them." According to the Epoch Times, the pipeline moves oil and natural gas liquids for 645 miles through northern Wisconsin and Michigan to Sarnia, Ontario. The nearly 23 million gallons it carries daily are refined for gasoline, jet fuel, and propane in several Midwestern states, as well as Ontario and Quebec. If Enbridge were to shut it down, the Epoch Times reported that Mike Moeller, Enbridge's Director of Operations for the Great Lakes region, said consumers will shoulder the burden of supply disruptions and related price increases, particularly for propane and transportation fuel. Now, those in the southeast part of the nation certainly shouldered a heavy burden of disruptions after Colonial shut down their pipeline. For those in Michigan and other states served by the Enbridge Pipeline, this is also not a small burden to take on, particularly as this part of the country relies heavily on propane to heat their homes and businesses in the cold weather months. Since there isn't anything wrong with the pipeline, Enbridge refused to follow the governor's order. According to the Epoch Times, it said, "Only the federal government has regulatory authority over its operations," with the Canadian government pointing to the 1977 Transit Pipelines Treaty between the U.S. and Canada as proof. Governor Whitmer wrote in her op-ed that she filed a lawsuit last year and is confident the courts will see things her way and that markets are currently seeking other sources for their propane. And then, ladies and gentlemen, she has the nerve to write that Michigan is also taking steps to prevent price gouging and exploring opportunities to invest in renewable energy, energy efficiency, and electrification to bring down long-term costs. Well, this tells us she's expecting short-term supply difficulties and just expects suppliers to just absorb the burden placed on it by her office and her radical environmental ideas. And then she pulls out the renewable energy card like it's some sort of a magic wand that will solve all the problems, although it can only make things worse. And the ones who will suffer the most will be those that cannot afford alternatives or whose house is too inefficient to keep up with other heating sources. Exactly like those who battle against capitalism, she makes the inaccurate assumption that business owners don't care about the land in which they operate and are willing to trade environmental disasters for profit. In reality, it's the profit and the willingness to serve their customers that gives them a larger responsibility in taking care of the land on which they operate. The Epoch Times reported that Enbridge is currently working to tunnel beneath the lakebed to further improve the safety of the pipeline. Yet the issue of placing the environment before people is disturbing, and that trend is growing. In fact, the United Nations proposed this very thing in the early 1990s through its Agenda 21 program. A supporting document of Agenda 21 included this introduction. Effective execution of Agenda 21 will require a profound reorientation of all human society, unlike anything the world has ever experienced. A major shift in the priorities of both governments and individuals, and an unprecedented redeployment of human and financial resources. This shift will demand that a concern for the environmental consequences of every human action be integrated into individual and collective decision-making at every level. Now, while Wikipedia and advocates of Agenda 21 will argue that Agenda 21 is a non-binding agreement, it becomes binding when state and local officials incorporate Agenda 21 suggested courses of action as laws and regulations. This is what will happen if Congress is allowed to vote on such radical environmental initiatives as the Green New Deal. Agenda 21 morphed into Agenda 2030 with a goal of implementing this program by, of course, the year 2030. The agenda has also gotten a boost from the World Economic Forum, which has suggested that by 2030, property rights will be a thing of the past. Fossil fuels won't be used, and meat will merely be a treat instead of a staple as the world trends vegan. All while the world is being governed by a handful of countries supplanting today's superpowers. This is the basis of the Great Reset, which takes advantage of the pandemic to suggest a reset of society from one that focuses on the individual and shifting this focus to the collective, and from national independence to worldwide interdependence through globalism. Along with this, a cashless society would be introduced with a new global digital currency replacing the dollar. Now, none of this is our speculation. This is what the globalist planners and supporters of Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and the Great Reset have all advocated. With a Biden administration and radical Democrats in Congress, Republicans should not engage in any kind of compromise. They should even refuse to discuss the agenda and skip any type of debate, instead making the case for protecting property rights and clearing government out of the way. As this video is being recorded, the first meeting of the Free Trade Commission organized under the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, the USMCA, is being hosted virtually by U.S. Trade Representative Catherine Tai. Although the USMCA was negotiated under a Republican president and Congress, the agreement contains a 30-page chapter on the environment, which isn't even in the list of enumerated powers for Congress in the Constitution. Yet, we will soon have an unelected and unaccountable commission to weigh in on American business practices and their environmental impact. If the Free Trade Commission follows the precedents set by the European Commission regarding how much control it could gain, predictions published at the New American indicate that the USMCA is essentially calling for control over waters, lands, and organisms across the three countries. It would gain control over all three via layered levels of government, all of which would strip the United States of control in these areas and give control to regional governmental entities. With the US EPA already attempting to control human behaviors, where Americans live, how they live, and what type of work can be done in a given region, with little to no oversight from American citizens, by making rules governing air, land, water, and organisms, imagine a regional entity with the same power and no real oversight whatsoever. America is under attack, and not just from radical environmentalists in the States, but also from those who wish to do away with American individualism and our rights and exchange them for the collective of globalism, in which the government grants rights instead of recognizing our Creator. The issue isn't the environment. It's about control. Control over you and whether or not you will keep your freedom. Now, if this doesn't sit well with you, It's time to do something about it. The John Birch Society has exposed and worked to stop the advance of globalism since 1958. We are the only organization created to oppose the globalist agenda and restore Americanism. We use the tools and techniques our founding fathers gave us to protect the God-given rights of all Americans. Don't let your freedom become someone else's responsibility. Apply for membership today and begin working with others in your area. Links are in the video description. It's time to act. The very survival of our republic depends on it, and we thank you in advance. I'm Bill Hahn for the John Birch Society, and until next time, stay informed, stay active, and be bold, Patriots.